Today's Bible reading comes from Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 to 13. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamp. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them were drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those bridesmaids got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some yourselves." And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you so much. Well, this is a parable about feasting. Thank you. And weddings. I repute it to know quite a bit about feasting, but I certainly know a bit about weddings. This summer, 2 of my children, I have 3 children, 2 of my children were married. Lydia was married to Daniel in August, and there were bridesmaids. And Tom was married to Kate in October, mid-October. There were loads of bridesmaids. I think there were 6 bridesmaids. And since I've been here, because of the kindness of the superintendent, minister, I've done 5 weddings in 7 weeks. And each one has a number of bridesmaids, obviously. Actually, in England, the bridesmaids come in behind the bride, right? But here, they come in very slowly before the bride. Yeah? Okay? And I have to say to you, though Matthew doesn't reflect this, bridesmaids have to be in a kind of blue. There's no doubt about it. At both of the weddings of the summer and all the weddings that I've taken here, the bridesmaids are in some kind of version of azure blue or pale blue, okay? So Matthew doesn't say it, but it is undoubtedly the case that they were in blue. And so I think I'm well qualified to preach about this parable. It's a picture of a Jewish wedding in rural Palestine. There'd often be evening events as part of the wedding. There would be sometimes torchlit processions and inevitably delayed arrivals. And here, it is the bridegroom who is delayed. He's expected for the feast. But there's no clear timing for this. There would have been earlier ceremonies. There would have been a ceremony at the bride's home, and there would be a ceremony at the groom's home. And now, there would be a feast. And indeed, everybody's invited. I mean, I don't mean some people are invited. I mean, everybody who lives in the village is invited. And the feast doesn't last for a couple of hours. It lasts certainly for a couple of days and maybe a week. So these things go on and on. The fact that the bridegroom is slightly delayed, even by a number of hours, at the beginning, doesn't bother people at all. They're feasting anyway. So, we have this wonderful parable. Parables do have, normally, just the one point. There may be lots going on in the parable, but there's one point for the parable. What is it? Here's the answer. It's be ready. Now, in a way, the sermon could be done at that point. Be ready. But there is a little more going on in this particular parable, so let's stay and have a look at it. Jesus' hearers would be familiar with the Old Testament and with the Proverbs. And in the Proverbs, there is wisdom and folly, or sometimes foolishness. Wisdom and folly. And wisdom and folly in the Proverbs are described in feminine terms. So you have wisdom, she, and folly, she. So here we have Lady Wisdom and Mistress Folly as depicted by the 10 bridesmaids. So 10 of them here. And they've each got a lamp. Now, what kind of lamp did they have? Well, typically lamps were made of clay and they were kind of shaped like that. If you cup your hands and have a little lip at the front, then they were shaped like that. And you would put the wick in it and the wick would go into the oil and so you would light it. And you had to take great care because you didn't have one of these. Actually, it doesn't work. But I mean, you didn't have one of those to light it. You didn't have any matches. You had to light it from some kind of fire and to keep it carefully because it was vulnerable and you wanted to look after it. So they've got a job on, these 10 bridesmaids, with their little... there are some people, some commentators who say that actually they had a kind of twigs that were put together and you dip them in the oil and then you light it, okay? Like a kind of torch like that. Not a torch as in batteries, but a torch that will be held out. But in a way, the text suggests that actually it was a clay lamp. Just a little light that they had. Not much oil in it. Therefore, Lady Wisdom, the 5 of them, they've got additional oil, okay? And they bring it along. They've each got a lamp. Be ready. Be ready with your light. Unfortunately, in the parable, they're all asleep. They're asleep on the job. And actually, it's interesting that Jesus doesn't suggest that there's anything wrong with that. It's just a long time. They've been up early. They've been preparing all those blue dresses to put on. The makeup, the hair, the stylist. Oh, my goodness. At my daughter's wedding, the hairdresser came to our house before 8 o'clock in the morning. The wedding was at 2. I mean, she didn't take very long over me. But for Lydia, she was there until right at the end. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. Of course, Rosie goes, the bridesmaids go, the stylist went, and then there's me and Lydia. And we have a little father and daughter talk, right? And the taxi man comes, the car comes. So we go to the church, and we get out the car, and the bridesmaids come to greet us up the pathway from the beautiful English parish church. And Beth, who's my other daughter, says to Lydia, "Where's your flowers?" Flowers! Oh, they're back at the house. It took us 15 minutes to drive from the house to the church. True, he did it slowly. And I said to this taxi man, to the driver of the car, I said, we have to go back and get the flowers. We need to do it quick. I tell you, that man is an F1 Formula driver. We were there and back in 12 minutes. With the flowers. All is well. Hallelujah. Be ready. I should have read this parable before Lydia's wedding. We weren't to sleep on the job, but we were just having a father and daughter conversation. We weren't thinking about flowers. Anyway, all was well. The flowers got there. Hallelujah. So did we all. We don't want any slackers on this. So what is really going on here about being ready? It's about responding to Jesus. And what's interesting in Matthew's gospel, he treats his material differently from Mark and Luke and certainly John. But what's interesting in Matthew's gospel is that as soon as Jesus enters Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, there's trouble. And everything relates to him and how people respond to him. The bridegroom in this parable that Jesus tells is, all the commentators say, is Jesus himself. How people welcome Jesus, how people respond to Jesus and respond to his teaching. There's a really, I found it quite a difficult thing in this parable, because when the bridegroom arrives, the ones that don't have enough oil say, hey, can you share a bit with us? Can you give us a bit? And the ones that have it say, I'm terribly sorry, girls, but actually you should have thought of this ahead of time. I find that really difficult. Because I think, hey, come on, there should be sharing and caring. Why is it like that? I think this is the reason. Though that would have been kind and generous. You can't borrow a relationship with God. You must possess it. You can't borrow a character that is gracious and good and kind. You must be clothed in it. You can't live on someone else's spiritual capital. Therefore, be ready. And I say directly and specifically to you today, is that you? Are you, in effect, Mistress Folly? Living on someone else's spirituality? Or have you received, responded to Christ? Possessed the love, the forgiveness, the mercy that he offers? If that is you, then today, as we receive communion, I encourage you to do that. As you receive communion, receive the bread and wine as receiving Christ into your life, that you may be clothed with Christ's love and grace and forgiveness and mercy, and in the power of the Holy Spirit. So, be ready, yeah, but it's also about responding to Jesus. And then, I think there's something else here that's really apposite for us and our church congregations. And it's this. Keep the flame alive. Remember what I said about those clay lamps and a little flame. It's vulnerable. You know, I mean, this candle is vulnerable. Oh, not all the lamps go out. They're vulnerable. So we have to take care of them. I want to say to you as a pastor, keep the flame alive. Paul to Timothy, 2 Timothy 1 and verse 6 says, keep the flame alive, rekindle the flame. And so I'm at risk of abusing the parable, really. But I want to say to you, in the midst of all that is happening around us, keep the flame alive. I understand in the context of Hong Kong over the last months, and maybe even today, it's difficult because of community conflict. But also, we're only 18 months back into this building. And so there's some people who say, hey, we should be already doing this or already like that. We're a young church. We may be 126 years old as Methodists on this spot, but we're a young church. We're still working out how to use the building, how to be church here in this place. It'll take 5 years. Keep the flame alive. And don't forget the journey. Some of you were here when, on the last Sunday of June 2014, we wept on this site and prayed on this site and left the old building. And I think we marched to TSK. I think we did. And said some prayers there. And then for 200 Sundays, we got there at 8 o'clock in the morning and we changed and transformed that grubby school into a place of worship, a place where children could be taught, a place where young people could find a home, where the various congregations, and we brought them from Fortress Hill and from at the Duke of Windsor Auditorium, and we were all together in the one place. And it was tough. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget with what joy Reverend Eden led us. I mean, I wasn't there, but I saw the film. Led us from TSK to here. With what joy we entered a building site. And now, in these beautiful sanctuaries, we're working out how to be church. Do not be despondent. Do not look at other places and think, oh, my goodness, they're better than us. No. God has a vision. God has a future. God has a place for these congregations in this place. And I believe more strongly than I've ever felt, and I've felt it since 2011, I feel more strongly than I ever felt before, that actually God has a proud and amazing future for the life of this church and this congregation. Now, if you like, you can say, he's off his rocker. He's got to 70 and he's off his rocker. You can say that if you like. But I believe it passionately. And that's why, for Rosie and I, we love to come and to minister, to encourage, to be with you. Keep the flame alive. Do not be slackers. Don't go to sleep. Don't despair. Keep the flame of faith and hope and vision alive. And sheer godly determination, the kind of grit that keeps things going. And congregation, support your ministry team. Support Reverend Eden. Support Paul. Support those who volunteer and give of their time and energy in the life of the church. Support and encourage. Say thank you. Say thank you 1,000,000 times. You know, I used to say to Rosie, since we've come here in 2011, no one ever complains. And then I learned that people thanked me in English and complained in Cantonese or Tagalog or whatever. But thank 1,000,000 times before you ever dare say something that is critical. Thank 1,000,000 times. In all of this, be ready, responding to Jesus and keeping the flame alive, rekindling that flame. You know, there is no phrase that is filled with such regret as too late. When you get to the gate at the airport, sorry, too late. Going for the train, too late. Worse still, for the family member who's been ill for some time. I'm sorry, too late. Be ready. Don't leave it late. Respond to God now. Respond to Jesus. Keep your light burning. Rekindle the flame.